just been thinking about Christianity and how it might need kind of critical friends if it's not going to ossify, and how some versions of Christianity, at least they present themselves on YouTube, seem very static and very wedded to an idea that the faith can't change over time, it can't evolve, it has to be, you kind of have to adhere to the, fairly rigidly to the tenets that were laid down at a certain point in history, and the idea that it might change. And the idea that you would listen to criticism in order to, allow change to take place is almost anathema. I get the sense that a lot of people who are a certain kind of Christian on YouTube, resist change at all costs and don't allow themselves to participate in the kinds of critical conversations which would reveal the need for change, or which would foment change, or which form the framework for change. And I wonder why that is. Well, one of the things I've noticed, and I guess I just thought about this just now actually when I was talking about this, is to do with evolution really. Because I find myself using the word evolve or evolution quite a bit, or using evolutionary metaphors, talking about how all the plants around us, this tree, my own body, these flowers, all these things have grown and changed over vast stretches of time and have become the things that they are now because of evolutionary pressure, because in effect of responses to the criticisms of the environment, if I can put it that way. The environment has tested the validity of each of their claims, if I can kind of put it like that, and what we're looking at is so far at least the success of these organisms in responding to those criticisms effectively and changing their structure slightly in order to be able to better resist the pressure of those criticisms. And that's as an idea, I think that's a key metaphor in lots of other things, isn't it? It's a metaphor in how markets work, but it's also a metaphor in how ideas work. Sometimes we talk about the marketplace of ideas, but we also talk about the climate of ideas, or the environment of ideas, don't we? And how ideas themselves tend to be shaped over time by being put under some kind of selective pressure by the environment. So a scientific paper, if someone writes a paper for example, it's put under pressure, under peer pressure by other scientists, and it has to try and survive the criticism of the environment in which it's placed. People have to look at this and try to repeat the experiment if it's an experiment, or try to find fault with it, try to find its weaknesses, in the same way that predators are constantly trying to find the weaknesses in these plants, and their evolution is constantly trying to patch those weaknesses and build strengths. So the same thing about scientific theories, for example, or any kind of theory, is it's constantly being preyed upon by an environment which looks for weaknesses and allows that idea to build strengths in response. But certain kinds of dogmatic faith don't do that. And it seems to me that there's a close correspondence between the holders of kind of dogmatic faith, the holders of a version of Christianity which is adherent, which is very dogmatic about its truth status, very dogmatic about its absolute status, its unchanging status. Those kind of people, and their feelings about evolution. I haven't done a full survey. I've asked these people, but they tend not to respond to my questions. But I would bet that I'm talking to and about here quite a few evolution skeptics. I think people who are skeptical about evolution, whose worldview is caught up in this idea that there's a young Earth here, possibly young Earth at least, one in which everything that we see and hear and feel, all these plants, these animals, ourselves, were put here relatively recently by a divine being, and we are unchanged, and this environment is unchanged. Nothing changes by selective pressure. There is no natural selection going on. There are no weaknesses being exploited and strengths being built up. There is no change over time and the increasing organisation because of that change, if that's your worldview, then you probably hold that worldview about ideas, not just about the natural world. You'll probably be resistant to the idea, or just unfamiliar with the idea perhaps, that ideas themselves change over time, and that's a good thing, and that ideas can improve by being tested, and that ideas can, and theories and worldviews and moral frameworks can change for the better by being put under some kind of pressure by the environment, by being tested. I'd be interested to know if there is a correlation there between people who are evolution deniers and those who adhere to a kind of dogmatic, ahistorical version of religious faith.